All right, guys. So Jen Psaki did a podcast this weekend, and in this podcast, she did some major shilling for her old boss, Joe Biden. You guys might remember her as the first press secretary before Karine Jean-Pierre. She was Circle Back Psaki, as she was called, because she was never really straightforward and never gave you a direct answer. Everything always had to involve her circling back to give you an answer. So it got her the name Circle Back Psaki. She's since then though, she's been blowing up and she's soon to be a primetime fixture on MSNBC, the most left-wing socialist network there is. This is the new direction that they're going in, which is actually even more socialist, even more left-wing. But I digress. In this interview, she's saying that it's dangerous to question anything having to do with how the Democrats covered up Joe Biden's cognitive ability and his limitations. I mean, we all knew it from the start. I mean, we knew it during the 2020 campaign that something was not right with Joe. But these folks, they're determined to get into office because they have so many plans for their socialism that they just have to go with whoever is the most likely to get elected. You guys remember everybody in the primary basically backed out in order to give Biden the win, even though he was never up for this job. So it became everyone's responsibility to cover up for Joe Biden, everywhere from CNN to the Democrats themselves. Everyone tried to get us to believe that this guy was just fine. Well, they were able to keep that lit until the debates back in 2024. You guys remember that? Well, that was a catastrophe for the Democrats. So, what you got now that we're about 4 or 5 months out of his administration is his former lieutenants all going out there and basically shutting down any type of conversation or discussion when it comes to his mental health and his flat out dementia he was struggling with throughout his presidency. But this is what the socialist nanny state has to do because it really was never about Joe Biden. There were even statements made that they didn't care if this man died while in office, as long as they got their agenda across, which I just think is the most common thing that socialists do. It's never about the person. It's always about the mission. And this mission was to grow the government, to overflood the borders, to spend trillions on green energy, and to do whatever they had to do to create the nanny state or to further expand it. So we're going to look at this interview, guys, because I think it's a brilliant example of what the liberals will do in order to cover their tracks when it comes to the nanny state. Now, we should be having, in my opinion, congressional hearings over this thing, but you don't really hear much of it. The Democrats have all but swept it under the rug, and the media is not going to ask what happened. So we're going to take a look at this clip here because I want you guys to be able to recognize the lengths these folks will go to when it comes to protecting the nanny state.
I think there's a consensus that the media generously missed and ungenerously covered up Joe Biden's frailty. And I was wondering, did the White House cover this up? Did the media cover this up? Like, what? Just sort of in retrospect.
I think cover up is such a loaded phrase. I never saw that person, not a single time. And I was in the Oval Office every day.
Okay, just a couple of things, Jenny. First thing you'll notice is she says it's a loaded phrase. I mean, what's loaded about cover up? I mean, it's a simple question. Is it a cover up or not? Joe Biden all of a sudden became that person. So she's really quick to detach herself away from him now. I mean, and it only gets better from here. Let's keep going.
That was on that debate stage. I'm not a doctor. Aging happens quite quickly. Were things that people saw during that period of time that were similar to that or would have been in a category of that? I don't know, possibly, right? And all these books are going to tell us.
But let's.
Okay, so she says aging happens quickly. So it didn't happen while you were there. When you got in, he was just fine. And all of a sudden, this quick aging process took effect. And then she goes on to say that, well, we're going to find out the truth later on down the line. It won't come from me, but perhaps in these books that are going to be coming out, there might be some shred of truth in there. I mean, these people are so skilled, at least they think they are, at passing the buck and just covering for the nanny state. But this is the desperation socialism has to go through in order to get people into office who will spend this kind of money, who will enact these kind of this legislation guaranteed to rob from the rich and give to the poor.
Sort of take it in two pieces. First, like your old colleagues, like I mean, and you talk to these folks, I talk to these folks. Like, do you think that were they actively covering it up? Were they sort of in denial, or was that just a bad debate? Like, what is your read on that?
Well, this is what I mean about cover up is a very loaded term, I think.
Well, it means you knew that it was really bad and you're pretending otherwise, versus you're deluding yourself, which I think is what people do a lot.
Well, I understand, but I still think it's like cover up is often like a crime, right? We're talking when people use that term.
They say it's
and
worse
phrase,
than the crime.
people use that term as they relate to
Yeah.
Watergate, bring up of not sharing public information about a war.
Yeah, and I'm not accusing anybody of a crime.
I understand,
here,
but other people have used that term, and I
Yeah.
think it's a bit of a dangerous term.
Ho, ho, ho. So she's really getting kind of perturbed. I mean, hats off to this guy who's pressing her. I mean, she's not used to that. You guys would see her, dodging questions in the press room all day, but in this intimate setting, she can't just do that. So you see, she's getting kind of irritated and kind of wanting them to back off. I've done my part, is what she's trying to say. I guess she thought this guy would be a lot more like Chris Hayes was in yesterday's video, kind of more of a fanboy than he was an actual journalist. But hats off to this guy. He's actually doing his job and he's pressing her. And as you can see, she's doing all she can to really downplay the fact that she was fully aware of this guy's mental health condition. She just can't say that. She's got the big job coming up. She's getting ready to do big things. So she can't just throw her old boss under the bus. And but it's quite entertaining to see her, try to tell this guy, "Hey, back off." When you use cover up, it's getting dangerous, and it's just I love this stuff.
I don't know. I have not talked to them, any of the people in these books, about this particular question. And I think that at their root, a lot of the people who are mentioned are good human beings. And so I like to think that, no, they would not be a part of an active, let's hide from the public what we see happening privately. And I don't know the facts of what was happening privately.
Do you feel like we were too?
Okay, did you guys just see that? She goes from knowing every intimate detail of the Biden administration. She knew it ins and out. But she got all the way up to behind the scenes, and then she didn't want to know anymore. Why is it, Jen, that you didn't want to know more?
Tentative writing about it? It's a sensitive thing to write about. I mean, and it was hard to report. Or do you think I don't know, should we have been more aggressive about it in 23, 24 as a story? Because it obviously, in retrospect,
Yes.
pretty big story.
Well, what I
The
don't know,
biggest.
Ben, and maybe we'll learn from these books, is what the facts were behind the scenes. So what the media missed. And maybe the media missed a lot. And so maybe in retrospect, which is always easier to be critical of the media about, frankly, right? There were major stories and moments missed. What I think is challenging, if you don't know about what's happening privately, right, is that Joe Biden was in his early 80s during that period of time. We all knew his age. That was not a secret. What was happening behind the scenes, I don't know. What was also true that I would find actually a little tricky if you're a reporter of any kind, is that while we know there were problematic things behind the scenes now in 23 and 24, there was an aggressive all-out pitching operation from the right wing and from the Republicans about Joe Biden's age and how he was in decline and like sleeping in the Oval Office, a lot of which wasn't true, the majority of which wasn't true.
Well, how would you know, Jen? You weren't there, right? I mean, you don't know what the majority is true or untrue because remember, you didn't know what happened behind the scenes. You're waiting like the rest of us for these books to come out that's going to tell us what happened right behind you. So how would you know?
2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, right? So it's
It makes you. I mean, I know the feeling, right? Like you're under attack for there's this.
Did you see how he just rolled his eyes and looked away like he can smell through the BS too? And he's just like, look, I understand you're getting offended. I understand this is not comfortable because you've never been challenged like this. You surround yourself with all of your latte sipping liberals, and you never have to actually face real questions from real journalists. And this is new to you. I think this guy's great.
distorting effect of like you're in this noise machine, you're under attack, you deny, you fight back, and at some point there's some underlying reality that slips away or something.
Which is, yes, that's what I'm getting at, right? Is like, you know, that was and it worked. I mean, when we got polling before 23 and 24, on nearly weekly basis, I mean, the biggest vulnerability for Biden was his age, right? Even before all this.
I mean, they were correct, weren't they? Like they were saying this guy is too old to be president, and like
I love it. He didn't let her get by with that. She tries to belittle Republicans for bringing this stuff up and saying that they were just saying that to score points. But he's like, no, but it's true. It's correct. This guy was not ready for prime time. I love you. This guy is great.
it wasn't just spin. Like it really like turned out they were correct. At best he aged very fast in those last couple of years.
Well, that may be, but here's the thing. My experience with him was that he was a person who told a very long story in the Oval Office, but that was the case 30 years earlier, right? So how do you differentiate? I don't know. You can still be critical of people for not differentiating, right?
Yeah.
And also was still somebody who put together a coalition to address Ukraine, who still was the person primarily negotiating big legislative deals. So it's like, what does it mean that he wasn't able to be in that period of time?
See, there he goes. I mean, as long as he was there to sign the checks, as long as he was there to pass trillions in spending when his cabinet deemed it necessary, he was fine. I mean, I'm sure there were times where Joe Biden was looking at an executive order and not knowing what he was signing. But that's what the whole intent was, hey, we might get 8. We definitely got the next 4. Let's get as much legislation through that's going to expand in any state as we possibly can. That's why you saw canceling the student loan. That's why you saw $1 trillion on green energy. That's why you saw trillions to infrastructure. That's why you saw tax increases. That's why you saw all this border nonsense that they were doing. I mean, it was all pushed extra fast because I think, if nothing else, if Kamala didn't get reelected, or continue the administration's goals by getting elected, then they were going to have to go for it all in one administration. I mean, and they did everything they could, guys. Let's go ahead and wrap this up.
Should he have run? I think if he had not run, this would have been a different thing, right?
Yeah,
a
totally.
different conversation.
Do
Because it was
you wish?
also,
I mean, in retrospect, you must wish he hadn't.
Of course, because I think in the period of time I worked for him and later, he did a lot of great things. I'm not saying everybody has to agree with him. They don't, but he did a lot of great things as president. And I think that a lot of his legacy has become, for at least this period of time, based around this question of him running for reelection, not being aware that or not being honest with himself about not being able to do another full term.
You said it right. He wasn't aware. He was out of here. His brain was mush by the time he finished out his term. But this is what they do, guys. I just thought I'd bring you this a little snippet here from this interview that she did over the weekend. I mean, because it so well illustrates, and she even says it at the end, he was able to spend trillions of dollars and expand that nanny state for us. So Joe did his job, and I'm not going to stand here and actually tell you the truth, because if I did that, the American people would be too upset, and they'd understand socialism for what it actually is, and we'd lose even more support. So I just thought this, guys, was an important interview. Wanted to bring it to you. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Again, am I looking at this stuff too seriously? The channel is called Crime and Socialism, and that's because socialism is it just breeds crime, because at its heart it is about theft. It's about robbing the rich to give to the poor, and doing so with this noble heart that very rarely works out. But that's all I'm going to say on this video, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And again, I do appreciate the subs. I do appreciate the comments. Let's keep both coming. Let's grow this channel, and let's expose the left for this dangerous socialism that they've gotten the country into, and maybe we can roll it back. All right, guys. Well, that's all I have on this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next Crime and Socialism, and I'm out of here.